If you haven't gotten your copy of Bare Naked Bravery, How to Be Creatively Courageous, then head on over to Amazon right now. It could be on its way to your house or into your device before I'm done introing this next episode. Before we get into today's show, if you are listening to this episode on Tuesday, the day that it first goes live, then there is still time to jump in on a last-minute masterclass that I'm teaching on the subject of how to use your fear and get what you want. The class is free, it's hosted online, and there will be a replay available for those of you who sign up on the class list. I know that time zones happen, and so do day jobs and other things. So you can go ahead and sign up for the class by going to emilyannpeterson.com/workshops to get yourself on the list. And the reason why I'm teaching this class and future master classes is because I'm launching the School of Advanced Bravery soon. I'm really excited about it. And this class is just a sampling of what is in store for all of you. So everyone who is on my email list and or who attends the class will get an exclusive invitation and information about the School of Bravery. But of course, we'll also spend loads of time diving into the process of how you can use your fear to get what you want. Is something that I've noticed that a lot of people don't realize that they know how to do, or that they know that they can do when you are feeling afraid. And it doesn't mean that I'm never feeling fear. In fact, I've learned to use it as a tool for my benefit. So if you've ever found yourself with a death grip on resisting change, then this is definitely the class for you. If you are listening to this episode after the masterclass is over with, then head on over to emilyannpeterson.com/join so you can join my email list and catch the next invitations for free masterclasses coming up. Again, if you're listening to it today, though Tuesday, and it's not too late, go to emilyannpeterson.com/workshops, and I will see you in class. Okay, let's get into it for the episode today, shall we? I'm so excited. Filmmaker and yoga teacher Ann Hedly Rousseau is with us today, and she is a mother, a wife, a dancer, a yoga student, a yoga teacher, gardener, and lover of life who happens to have alopecia. Alopecia areata is an autoimmune disease that causes hair loss and currently has no cure. Besides acceptance, that's kind of a cure. Anne recently finished her film Mop Cap, An Alopecia Story, which lays out her latest hair loss journey. And it was so fascinating to hear Anne work through some of these questions about identity, ego, compensation, and image in this film. I got my hands on an advanced screening and I was really, really intrigued by it. Really loved it. I knew I had to have her on the Bare Naked Bravery podcast, and I'm so glad that it worked out. So today we dive a little bit deeper into the audacious luxury of hair and the audacious luxury of being bald. We talk about the ways we show up in the world with or without our egos, with or without our hair. We discussed the favoritism of ideal beauty and how the rest of us choose to compensate. Anne holds a BFA in dance and choreography and had a career as a modern dancer in New York City before she moved to Appleton, Maine, which is where she now lives with her 3 kiddos and homeschools them. And she's also been teaching yoga for 19 years, so she has an immense amount of spiritual wisdom to offer as well. Anne is so fascinated by personal stories. I really admire that about her. And this is partly what makes her such a really good fit for the Bare Naked Bravery community. I know that telling her own story through her documentary, Mop Cap, An Alopecia Story, has been enormously healing, and I cannot wait for you to hear all about it. Let's dive in. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. As a singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and creative entrepreneur, I encounter some really fascinating stories. I'm on a mission to reveal the depth and width of bravery and its benefits to creatives like yourself. More than ever today, our world needs bravery, unique bravery, from everyone. This is the place where you find it. There is no script or censorship today because that's how these facets of Bare Naked Bravery are in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please note that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. One of the easiest ways you can share bravery with the world is to send this episode to a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle is Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Again, we need more bravery in the world, so let's be brave together. Let's do some Bare Naked Bravery.
Okay.
I've been so looking forward to this conversation because I watched your film. I watched the screener, and the entire time I was watching it, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. And I'm so glad this is here, that you're here.
Yay!
We are here. This is so fun. So Anna's here. She made this film called Mop Cap, a film. Wait, I'm totally botching it. This is embarrassing.
It's called Mop Cap. You got it mostly right. It's just an alopecia story.
That's what I was going to say, but I paused and then almost put my foot in my mouth, and then my pause caused me to put my foot in my mouth. There's a story about bravery for you. So, what is alopecia?
Alopecia is, well, this is interesting because I have an alopecian friend who really dislikes that it could be called a disease or even a disorder, because it's sort of a condition where your hair doesn't grow and it's kind of unknown why that happens. So it's called an autoimmune disease because it's thought that your immune system is attacking your hair follicles and prevents them from growing. But then I've read things about like, oh, well, it's your adrenals are really low, or it's because of your diet. And so nobody really knows why it happens, but it certainly happens for a whole bunch of people out there who are now all over my Facebook and Instagram feed. It looks like the only people in the world that exist are bald. And when you look through my feed, which feels really great. But alopecia is just some kind of thing that happens and your hair stops growing. That's not a good answer.
No, but it is a good answer. That's exactly how. Let me just say that what I really loved about your film was it's not necessarily here's all of the information you'll ever need to know about alopecia, like all the medical history, all of that kind of stuff. It is specifically your story about alopecia and what that's meant for you in your life, in your creativity, in your, life as a mom, and just generally a wonderful, decent human being. What does that mean to not have hair, or to have hair sometimes and not have it and other times? And it seems like such a surface level detail about your life, because it's just appearance, it's just hair. Right?
Yeah.
But what I really loved about your film was that it went really deep. Because I just see, I have my own story with identity and all of that mess, but identity is such a big part of us as humans. We need to know who we are and how we show up in the world, and hearing your side of the story, your version of this same story, is really, really wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So thank you for making the film. Truly.
You're welcome. I am so grateful to have had that inspiration to do it.
Yeah. Where did that come from?
I was losing my hair again for the first time in 20 years. And it was November. And it was between the period of Thanksgiving and Christmas that all my hair fell out this time. And I was panicked, and I had developed this life as a mother and a community member. This is how I thought of it then. And it was sort of that I was what I considered a normal white woman. And I did community service, and I had my kids, and I did all these things that involved me having hair, or that's what I thought. I really thought that. And so when I lost my hair, I thought, I don't know how I continue to be the person that I think I am without hair. And really what I had to do was reclaim my whole self and all of my history of alopecia that I had been sort of hiding away a little bit by not talking about it. It wasn't deliberate, but it was hidden. So one night I woke up after these few weeks of what the hell am I going to do? And I woke up in the middle of the night and I just sort of had this flash, which was, I'm going to make a film about this. I didn't know that I was going to make a whole film, but I knew that I was going to film myself talking about it. And I sort of thought it would be YouTube style testimonial. Like, this is not, I know what the cure for alopecia is. And the cure for alopecia is a whole lot of fun. And so that you forget about the alopecia. So the alopecia becomes the thing that makes your life more fun. And then you're cured, because it really doesn't matter if you have hair or not. And so probably the next day or so, I contacted a friend who's a filmmaker and kind of got the ball rolling. And it became a feature-length documentary. That wasn't my plan, but that is what it turned into.
So many questions just on that alone. What was that like to reach out to somebody and ask that project-specific question?
Well, I think what happens is I know how quickly, when someone like me who's had alopecia for my whole life since I was 5, I've had many experiences of losing my hair. And sometimes it would be just a small patch and the hair would grow back in again. But this time I knew my hair was all going. And I thought there was this time frame that I had to work with. I was sort of coming at it from a director's standpoint, I guess. I didn't know I was a director at that point, but I knew I had this window that I was going to be able to capture my raw emotion about it. As far as I go with it, in the film, I don't ever really, really break down. And actually, I probably never really broke down in real life. I had some episodes of crying with my husband, but I didn't really lose it.
Well, I will say this. You have moments in the film that are very tender. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, thank you.
And one of those was with your husband.
Oh, yeah. And that came in, that was sort of a last minute addition to the film, because I was really hesitant to get his perspective at all, because I really wanted it to be about my experience. And I get a lot of feedback from people, which is, what does your husband think about this? What's his reaction? Like, for a lot of alopecians, women, it's like, how are you going to find a mate? Well, men too are worried about finding a mate. If you don't have hair, how do you find a mate? And then if you do have a mate, what do they think about that? Is that divorce-worthy material? And so I was avoiding that because I thought, this isn't about him. This is about my experience. And then by the end, it felt like we were keeping him out of it too deliberately, and we needed his opinion. And his opinion is a little bit harsh, where I don't need to give it all away, but he's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, hair from an instinctual position as an animal, you think hair is health, and it means that you're going to be a reproductive force in the world. So he said, I really don't know if I would be attracted to you or not. And I think I needed to wait until that moment to actually hear that. I needed to really get clear with myself how I felt about being bald again before I even asked him.
That's brave of you to acknowledge that, first of all, and then to act on that and wait to ask that question. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really needed it to be my story the whole time. So I don't have extra money floating around to do a project like this. So to hire a filmmaker to do what I thought was going to be a free YouTube movie was a huge move for me. And I didn't even want to admit to anyone at first what I was actually planning, because my plans sort of got bigger and bigger as I went. And yet I sort of knew from the beginning that it was going to be pretty big, that it was going to be something more than I could explain to people. So I didn't ask permission for anyone. I had this just personal savings and I invested $3,000 right away, which for a film is not that much, but for just a project that I didn't know where it was going to go with with a family and the kind of low budget lifestyle that we have, it felt incredibly extravagant. A lot more money has gone into it since then. But in the beginning, that for me probably was the bravest thing because it felt very self-indulgent. It felt like what it might feel for someone to buy a Jaguar. I don't know. That's what it felt like to me.
Well, I mean, why does luxury feel like such a brave, audacious thing to do?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, I guess it probably feels audacious because it is excess, right? We don't need it. So it's outside of the stand. I'm just talking myself through this, right? So I don't actually know the answer, but I'm guessing it has something to do with the fact that if luxury is not common, by going for that uncommonness, that puts us outside of the comfort zone of normal.
Yeah, for me, it was really about a self-indulgence where it would be simple for me to spend $3,000 on someone that I love. And that feeling of like, I hope they're going to love this. This is amazing. But when it came down to doing something that I deeply wanted, which was really to tell my story and also really to tell my story in a very public way, it felt like what I had to do, but also there was an edge of it to me that felt really, really scary. And yet I knew I was going to do it, and I knew that I was going to do it no matter what. I mean, it was the biggest push to creativity that I can remember having in my life. And I've had lots of urges for creativity and lots of ways that I've engaged in it in my life. But this was really a project that had a lot of intuitive force behind it. Kind of like, you're going to do this. This is going to happen. And the result of doing it has been a tremendous healing for myself in a way that I certainly could have spent $3,000 on therapy, and I'm at least equally as well off as I would have been.
I find that so cool that you can, that we can invest in expression and have the same kind of benefits as other methods of healing.
Yeah, well, for me, this is telling stories and being heard is one of the most healing things I can think of for myself, but also listening to other people and being heard is the thing that creates this deep connection to help us understand that we are all one, essentially. We have slightly different variations of these stories, but we connect so deeply to people by hearing personal stories. And we know this is true. We listen to the TED Talks. I'm watching all of these little clips of personal stories on my Facebook feed and crying. And I mean, it's the sort of essential Hallmark got it right a long time ago of these heartwarming stories by connecting us to each other.
Totally. This past year's, the commercial that comes right off to the top of my head is the Amazon commercial with the dog and the lion costume. Instant tears for me. Instant tears.
I don't think I've seen that one. We're going to have to link to that. The dog and the lion costume.
Yes. Oh, the storyline is that this couple has a new baby. And the dog is really excited to meet the baby, but the baby doesn't like the dog. The baby likes, however, this little stuffed lion toy. And so they go on Amazon and purchase a big lion mane for this golden retriever. And the golden retriever comes in. I'm going to start crying right now. So silly. The golden retriever is wearing this silly little but cute little lion mane, and he walks into the room and the baby wants to play with them.
Oh.
And then of course Amazon was the thing that delivered this little lion mane costume. I need to not get so teary.
Okay, it's not
Just
making me
talking
cry. Now I want to know, like, what is it about that story that makes you go there?
I know.
It's like, would anybody in a lion mane do that for you? Is it the lion mane? Or,
we can't know these things.
well, I know. Okay, we can't know these things. Take it to the grand scale. We can't know these things about Emily Ann.
No, but I do think it is the storytelling that is the most powerful part of being alive, possibly, and connecting with each other and hearing each other's stories. That's so, so powerful. And maybe there's a lion mane and a golden retriever somewhere in there.
Okay, well, I think I've got it a little bit, which is what you're saying basically is the lion mane is the story that's connecting the toddler and the dog, right? So the lion mane is representing that thing that allows us to see the connection. Because without the lion mane, the toddler wasn't seeing how they were, how much they loved each other. And then, I pulled it all together in a neat little package for myself.
Well, and for me. So, but I find it interesting that here we are talking about alopecia, and I just started crying about telling me secondhand about a commercial that had something to do with hair. How hair was the missing connection. I find that so embarrassing. But I'm really glad we can laugh about it.
Well, at least you didn't say everybody, needs to have the beautiful mane to make connection.
No.
I don't know if I can be. I know that I used to feel, okay, I know. When I was in third grade, I didn't have hair, and I had to read a sentence in front of the whole classroom. And it had to do about, the sentence involved a bald eagle. And I could barely say this sentence in front of the class. I was shy to begin with. And the fact that I had to read out loud, the national bird is the bald eagle, it broke me in that sense. And I thought everybody was going to laugh at me, and nobody did. I was definitely a well-liked kid, but there were these moments where, the turning the light onto my big difference, which was alopecia, was really, really painful. But these days, all I want to do is talk about it. And I have to watch myself with people that aren't ready to talk about it.
What do you mean?
If I see someone in the grocery store that might have alopecia, I have to hold back a little bit and use some of my really good social skills of, like, maybe this person doesn't want a bounding bald person leaping up at them and pointing out that they might have alopecia, and they might not. Because I would tend to be like, hey, how are you? What's going on? Sort of like the way a lot of people will come up to me and say, oh, how are you? How's the treatment going? That kind of thing. And now these days, I used to hate that. But these days I'm like, oh, well, I don't have cancer, but I do have alopecia. Have you ever heard of alopecia? Oh, well, alopecia is this autoimmune condition that makes your hair fall out, but otherwise I'm perfectly fine. And because I walk around bald in public, I become this sort of beacon for baldness. And I think of it as this form of personal activism, which is, it's okay to be bald just because you want to shave your head. It's okay to be bald if you have cancer. It's okay to be bald if you have alopecia. It's okay to be bald if you're a man. It's okay to be bald if you're a woman. And it's also okay to be bald if you're a kid. One of the responses after showing the film at the International Maine Film Festival, one man said, oh, I love the film. That was great, but it really is disturbing to me to see kids who are bald. It's very, very sad for me. And I thought, all right, dude, maybe it's sad, but kids have every right to be bald. They have just as much right to be bald and not have your sadness put upon them. And I think humans just need to be free to look a lot of different various ways. and that we're getting closer and closer these days to that kind of freedom.
How have you seen that?
Well, I love looking at this body positive movement of, hey, it's okay to be big, it's okay to be little, it's okay to have no legs, it's okay to have weird legs. Maybe not everybody looks at that. That's one of the things that I look for, these personal stories. Like today I watched a woman, and I can't remember her name at all, but she was born with a deformity in her leg, which eventually required her to be amputated. She's pretty famous, but I don't know what her name is right now. And she finally realized that she could have all kinds of amazing legs. I think she did a TED Talk. And so she has like legs that make her 6 feet tall, and she's got beautiful glass legs. And she was one of the pioneers in those fancy running legs. And she broke a bunch of world records. So that legs are they look like a cheetah's back leg, and they're really fancy. So stories like that, I'm like, yeah, all of us who have these differences, and these differences make us extraordinary. We have been fighting our lives to be normal, or be compared to what we think is normal. And there is no normal. There's nothing that's normal out there. And we need to just go with it and start running with it. So I feel like I happen to just be a pioneer in the field of, and it seems so easy to be like, women can be bald and it's okay. Women can be bald.
Yeah.
Women can be haired,
Well, what I found really fascinating about going through your film was it prompted me to go back through my life and also identify the things in my life, or the moments in my life, or the opportunities in my life that I have had because of my hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I never would have gone through that. Like, I grew up in the South where big hair equals beautiful. And I have a lot of hair. So every time I go to the hairdressers, it's always like, oh, wow, you have so much hair. Like, we have that conversation of, I've got enough hair for 3 people. And, that thing has always happened to me. And I've realized that, oh, wow, as a musician, I probably get, as a plus size musician in the music industry, I have some things working against me, unfortunately, but my hair is great. So I might be plus size in the music industry, but I have enough hair to maybe compensate for it, which sounds awful when I say it out loud like that. But it's kind of true, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And so watching your film was really eye-opening for me to recognize that, wow, I've been very privileged to have hair. And at the same time, I'm kind of like not okay with it. I'm not okay with that extra amount of privilege that we give people who look a certain way, whether they chose to or not. It makes me, it's part of my own struggle with like, wait, why can't we all be okay?
Yeah.
And your film just did a really good job of walking me through that personal introspection on my side of things. So,
yeah. Well, for me, it comes back to this idea of ego. And when I was a little girl, my mom would kind of sometimes say to me, oh, you better watch that ego. I don't know what she was talking. I still, to this day, don't exactly know, except for that it was this great warning that I took seriously, that I had to watch out for my ego. And the thing is, I don't know if it was because of my alopecia or not, but I really tried to do well at things. I really tried to stand out so that people could see I was accomplished despite my alopecia. And I would say that is probably true for many alopecians who had it as a child. It's like, I've got to do something to draw attention away from this bald head. There's nothing you can do to draw attention away from that, really. But when I would win a swim race, I was a fast swimmer. At least I was an Olympic quality swimmer, although I thought I was when I was a kid. But when I would win a race, I thought, well, see, then nobody's thinking about my alopecia. They're thinking about what a good swimmer she is. or I took gymnastics long enough so that I could, anywhere I found a flat surface, I could run and flip. I could do like round off, back handspring, back handspring, back handspring, back handspring, back tuck. And that was like my trick. And so I would use that. I mean, I remember being in middle school between classes, and I would go run and tumble because that was like what I could do. I was just trying to be good, be exceptional, stop looking at my bald head. But that wasn't ever going to happen. In fact, the truth is my bald head became your big head of hair. It became the thing that drew attention to me and made everything all right. And so how it comes back to ego for me is then when I started studying yoga, there's this word in Sanskrit called ahankara, which means the I former, which equates to ego. And so the I former is this idea, sort of like we're made of clay, and we take all of these things that are who we think we are, and that becomes what we're made of. So for me, it's my alopecia is part of what I'm made of. My femaleness is part of what I'm made of. My height, my skin color, my digestion is part of who I'm made of. All of these things that we create to be who we are. So if one of those things falls off, we feel a real hole until we fill it with something else. So as long as I had hair, that was how I was actually formed. It was holding my spirit in. And then when I lose my hair, it feels like my spirit's spilling out, which is not a bad thing, but it feels horrible. Feels a little bit like dying until you fill it with something again. So I just had to replace that with, now I'm pretty attached to being bald. It brings me all kinds of, that's part of why I'm talking to you right now. So it becomes sort of a positive ego. So what I understood is that we actually need our egos, because otherwise we're random spirit. We need something to hold us into this unique position with which to view the world.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the people who use humor to hide behind.
Yeah.
That is their like golden feather in their cap. That is the thing that, somebody who loves humor like myself sees somebody who hides behind humor as like a, safety mechanism. I see that humor and I go, I still see you. Mm-hmm. And I'm fine with that boundary. And I'm fine with you showing up in the world with this humor as your warrior battlefield outfit that you're wearing.
Yeah.
But I still see you. And I honestly really admire and love that person because of the humor that they use, So I love that approach that like we can't hold ourselves without the boundaries of our ego and our identity. It's hard to grasp who we actually are without those things.
Right. And that maybe what we're here for is to see ourselves in in every little bit of reality of what we're made of, all the good and all the bad, and to love it all. Mm-hmm. And for me, doing this film was the thing, explaining it all. I had to pull out all of these old family pictures and find everything that I could that showed my alopecia, which was quite a research project to find old clips of video and old pictures and all of that stuff. And it really reconfigured, it's like a recapitulation really of looking at it through the lens of my present moment. And that was such a healing process for me that I can talk about it up and down and left and right and see how it felt at this time in my life and this time, and remember, and also to feel how wonderful it is to be free of the shame around it. I really did think it was my fault in some way. And now I think, well, it could be, but it's just a thing that is part of the story of my life. And it doesn't feel so painful anymore.
Can you talk to me a little bit about what that unearthing process was like, or that archiving, going back into the folders of time? What was that like to have to uncover some of these little details that you might have forgotten?
Well, I think what's funny for me is that I had a childhood full of alopecia, of uncontrollable hair growth and hair loss. And by the time I was in my 20s and I went to college, I felt like I had found some control over it, where I was shaving any hair that was growing in its patchy form of alopecia. So I would just shave it. And I got to the point where I was identifying as a bald woman. I was going to an amazing university for dance and getting a degree in dance and choreography. And that being a bald woman only gave me more street cred, really. Like, it just made me more amazing and more creative. So it was a wonderful time in my life of bringing power to the baldness. But then I grew my hair after that. When I grew my hair in, it was just like magically grew in. It was still, there was some evidence of alopecia where my hairline was really thin, I think, in the back. I only learned now that that's called the Audacious pattern of alopecia, where you sort of have like a band around your ears and the back of your head that's thinner or doesn't grow hair as much. But you basically look like you have hair. So for those next 20 years, I basically had hair and I hid the alopecia. I didn't think I was deliberately hiding it, but I remember in book group once something came up and I was like, oh, should I tell them? It's such a long story. That was my excuse. It was such a long story, but these were my friends and I didn't tell them about it when it came up. Like, it would have been appropriate subject matter around some book or something. So at that point, I realized that I was sort of hiding it. I was sort of like not wanting to deal with the hard emotional work of bringing it up to my present moment. But that really was important. When I went back and looked at those pictures, I could see that there were some pictures that I had a personal censorship. That Mop Cap picture of me in the Mop Cap, I really felt embarrassed about that up until I made this film. Now I think it's adorable. But at the time, when I was sort of censoring my past, I think if someone asked to see a picture of me as a little kid, I mostly would have shown them one of the pictures of me having hair so that I didn't have to go through the whole story. So really unearthing the pictures was really pulling all of my history, the painful and the less painful, and really bringing myself, it was like creating a wholeness around me and letting everything be part of my story. And really becoming a true alopecia advocate, where I thought, well, if I have mostly a head of hair, I don't have to advocate for alopecia so much. But I think now I realize that whether you have hair or you don't have hair, alopecia creates an outlook on life, which is that sort of uncertainty and that feeling out of control. You just really don't know when your hair might fall out or might grow, which can also be kind of devastating when it decides to grow in randomly in crazy patches. That's not always welcome either.
What about the moments when you have presented yourself to the world as a bald woman and then, lo and behold, your hair grows back? Like, what do you do then?
Yeah, well, when that happened in my 20s, I was so thrilled to have hair growing. It was this real delight. It was just like so fun to have hair again. But I had completely accepted that baldness and loved it for the first time. And then my hair grew in. So I felt like I won the game. I thought, oh, I know how you solve alopecia. You become really comfortable being bald, and then your hair will just grow in. That's what it felt like to me. I thought, one, you do what you love. So I went to school for dance. Mm-hmm. Two, you get really comfortable and accepting of yourself and your baldness. And then three, your hair grows. So I thought I won the game. And then I had this life full of hair. So I didn't want to think about it because I really didn't want to lose my hair again. And when I lost my hair again, it's 2 years now, almost immediately hair started growing in again. And that was welcome because, again, I thought, see, I always grow my hair back in and I'm not going to be like totally bald for the rest of my life. And then a year later, my hair fell out again. And now, I am really hairless. I've got 10 eyebrow hairs, I should say, growing in. But I'm so hairless right now that it actually would be sort of I don't know. There's part of me that really is attached to being bald right now. I am really, really enjoying it. But I am also smart enough to know that I can't control this and I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. We'll get back to the bravery at hand in a second. But I wanted to remind you that I first began having these conversations both on and off the podcast because I was curious about what bravery actually meant. If we could build it, if so, with what ingredients. And I was so curious, I turned my research and personal stories of experiences with feats of bravery into a book. That book is called Bare Naked Bravery, How to Be Creatively Courageous, and it's now available in multiple formats on Amazon right now. So go get yourself a copy of Bare Naked Bravery, How to Be Creatively Courageous, and after you read it, let me know what you think. I've just always been intrigued by the concept of identity and how people choose to show up in the world with or without their identity, or in spite of what people think they should look like. And I know that can be, having gone through it myself, I know that, I should say, having gone through the pivot of, oh, I was this, but now I'm this. In my case, it was, I was a cello teacher, but now I'm a singer-songwriter, author. And that pivot, like I had to censor myself in discussing that story with people. I did it the other day with somebody. I was sitting across from them. We were talking about something else. And I could have gone way deep into, well, this is my life story. This is all like the things that make me me. And I chose not to bring them up because I wasn't super appropriate. I mean, we had the time to chat about it, but it wasn't like they weren't asking for my life story. But it also like could have added something to the conversation. But yet I was still like, no, I don't really feel like talking about that right now. Mm-hmm. And that's how I chose to show up in the world to that person.
Yeah.
And I just find that so fascinating that it changes on a minute by minute basis.
Yeah. And I think for me, the question that I have to ask myself, this is easy when you have alopecia. It's like, am I wearing a hat right now because I'm too uncomfortable to take it off? Or am I wearing a hat for my own comfort? So it's wintertime in Maine, and it's easy to wear a hat all the time. Even inside, it's like sort of comfortable to have a hat on. It's just chilly around the edges. And so when I go to a party, say, I have to decide, do I take my hat off at the door when I take my coat off? Most people would, but do I want to? And am I taking it off because I want to be bald right now? Am I taking it off? Like right now, I sort of just make myself take it off because it's kind of my personal challenge right now to not hide the baldness. I am not uncomfortable being bald around people, but the question comes up of you can feel yourself being seen by people who don't know you. And am I going to be really talking about alopecia right now? Does it have to come up? These days, I don't even, if it's somebody that I don't know and they don't ask me, I decide whether I want to talk about it or not. But I'm not talking about it because it's too painful for me, though that has happened in the past. It's just a very interesting thing to look at how we negotiate our feelings in relationship to other people and what that's going to bring up. Because I have often said, well, this is about me managing other people's comfort, but of course it's not. It's always about me managing my own comfort and my own comfort levels around it. I do like talking about alopecia, but it's also fun to just be a person and it's fun for me to meet somebody that I've never met before and not talk about alopecia at all. It rarely happens, but it is kind of fun too. Just be like, oh, it's just a look. Or just leave them guessing. I used to think that was really cruel to leave people guessing about my baldness, and I don't anymore. Like they might go away thinking I'm being treated for cancer. And if that makes them treat me more kindly, That's all right. And I don't always feel that I have to explain that. And I used to really feel like I wanted to set the record straight about exactly what was going on with me. And now it's like, it's okay for that to be a puzzle for you.
Yeah. This is definitely not the same thing, but I had a similar kind of moment earlier this summer. I was at a folks festival, and my I have repetitive corneal abrasion. So I got a flare up at the folks festival. And the way I have to deal with it is like, the best way to deal with it is to sit in a cold, dark room with my eyes closed, with no lights on, and just sit there and wait for it to get better. And usually it takes like 2 or 3 days. But I didn't have that time because I was there to be at a festival and like to go out and do things. So I walked downtown and got this massive hat and these darkest sunglasses I could find. And for the entire week that I was there, I wore that hat and those sunglasses. But I didn't tell anybody why, I told a couple people why I was wearing it, but it was really fascinating to observe other people observing me. Because you're wearing sunglasses, so some people, because they don't have your eye contact, they can't tell whether I know that they're watching me, you know?
Yeah.
That thing with sunglasses. So it was really fascinating to just observe people observing me, or kind of go like, who's this chick? Who's this chick thinks she is wearing sunglasses at night? You know, like
right. She thinks she's a superstar, right? Like that could come up too. Like who wears sunglasses at night?
And it did. I heard about it secondhand through other people, that like people were making their conclusions about me based on what I was wearing, and they weren't correct. But it was just really funny to go, oh, wow, people are going to make their own conclusions about you, even if you're just wearing sunglasses and a hat.
Right. And I think the power comes from not having to participate in those discussions, especially for someone like me, who I love to imagine what other people are thinking. That's part of my natural course of thinking. I wonder what that person could be thinking. So for me personally, to step away from being concerned about what other people might be thinking and feeling is this like whole new wonderland of space and time to think about what I am thinking and feeling. I spent a lot of my life in the other space of being concerned about other people's comfort and their thinking and feeling and accommodating that. And by stepping back into my own space and sort of turning off it's like putting on those horse blinders and just thinking, oh, what am I thinking and feeling? Mm-hmm. Of course, that turns into my personal meditation practice too, which is, since I started the film, that has also been something that has increased. I don't know if it's connected or why, if it's just random, but my personal meditation practice has become just easier and longer and stronger than it ever has been in my life. And so I have been able to look within more regularly and easily. And that's been a real blessing.
That makes sense to me, because so even in that week that I was wearing the hat and sunglasses, I was aware of how much mental energy I wasn't spending on appearance and what people thought about me. Because I was medically required to wear this hat and these sunglasses. Otherwise, I would have been absolutely miserable. Right?
Yeah.
So I had that like safety net of, well, I have to wear these things.
Yeah.
And so because I was forced into that experience, I was then freed up to have more of an observational operation mode of the week, you know, and so I was able to be in the moment a little bit more, or just watch this music or participate in the songwriting and be in the experience, rather than fussing and messing about what are people thinking about me? How do I present myself in the way that I want to be seen? All of this stuff. I just was forced to not be concerned about it for medical reasons, and then learned all this stuff about, wow, it feels so good to not give a shit about what people think about you, or with what people think about the way you look.
Yeah.
And also knowing that they're going to make their own conclusions.
No matter what.
No matter what. Yeah. But I can see, that, if that freed up my mental capacity in the moment in that week, I can only imagine what that would do for us if we were able to do that on a day-to-day basis and to see the benefits of that through meditation as well.
Yeah. And that brings back around this idea of who am I? So that meditation process of just simply sitting quietly with your eyes closed or open, whatever you like, but asking yourself the question, who am I? Who's the one thinking these thoughts? Who's the one sitting here? And it becomes this really interesting question of, well, clearly I'm not what I look like. There's something way beyond that. And then that question sort of falls in on itself to ask the bigger question of, who is the self? Who am I? I don't know if there's like a way to talk about that answer, except for that it's a big question and it has nothing to do with how we look.
Right. Let me ask you this. Total conversation flip.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody who is going through a situation where they need to show up in a physical, visible way, and perhaps they are timid or digging their heels about it for whatever reasons?
Well, the question for me is always, what's the motivation behind the why, and why do you need to? I have a lot of questions about should and have to. And I have a lot of questions about what people think has to happen. So I know why we need to show up for ourselves, but I know I'm flipping this question back and I don't really mean to.
Hey, that's okay.
Because the thing that I really, really believe in is doing what you love to do. I really believe in that. And that's part of homeschooling my children, as I really don't believe kids should sit still for very long at one time. Right? Mm-hmm. And I think that the sitting still in school trains us to do things that we don't want to do. And of course, every day I could find people to talk to, say, well, you have to do things that you don't want to do, because therefore, if you don't, you would never be able to have a job in the world. It's like, well, that's not true. People do what they love all the time. So why have we been fed the lie about having to do things that we don't love to do? That's a big question for me. So for someone who says, I'm having a hard time showing up, it's like, well, are you doing what you want to be doing? Because it doesn't seem that hard to show up for your passion. But maybe I'm wrong about that, because I certainly get my blocks. What do I do if I need to show up in my block? Well, I think it's time to do a little meditation. I think it's time to get more clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah, I 100% stand behind that.
Yeah. Because if you're having a hard time showing up or standing up, there's a reason. There's something talking to you. There's some reason why that's not easy for you. And it could either be that you're not doing what you love to do, or that you're not getting centered enough before you proceed. And I think there's a real benefit to pulling your power. It's like pulling yourself up from your bootstraps. Is kind of like getting grounded and centered and get your breath ready. It really pulls your power into your core, and you could do anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Okay, so I'm going to flip this again. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I do this just because I know the person. You and I know each other a little bit.
Yeah.
But this time I'm just feeling like it's the right thing to do. So do you have a question for me?
Always, I think.
Sometimes you get those little nudges and you got to say yes to them. So here's a nudge.
I feel like you were talking about this recently. So this could be a good question for you. Oh, and I think maybe you answered it. one of the things that I'm finding myself is and I can't, it's bothering me like crazy, is that I've got these sort of next steps to getting this film ready to be distributed. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but I've got some resistance to it. And I'm not saying technically what's the next step, but it also feels like a bravery issue. And it feels like maybe all I need to do is hire someone. Maybe all I need to do is find the right person that knows the right person to get it just to that next step of distribution. But it does feel to me like there's this like, it was so easy to get the film going. It was so easy to pull all of these things together. It was just flowing. And now I've gotten to this point and it's like, I can feel the edges of like, oh, I don't know. I just feel stuck.
Totally. I mean, I know so well how that feels because my own book went through the same situation. Like I wrote the book and like was sitting on it for a couple months.
Yeah.
Or I knew that the book was like 95% complete, but the only thing holding me back from doing the last 5% was me.
Yeah.
Me actually sitting down and taking the time to finish those last paragraphs. And it took way less time than I thought it would. It took a substantial amount of time, but it didn't take as long as I thought it was going to. And it certainly wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be, but there was just that like, I don't know, there was that like invisible shield that I had to break through.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've seen throughout interviewing everybody who is so brave and wonderful and admirable and heroic is that there's usually 3 reasons why people do brave things. One is that bravery is contagious.
Yeah.
So we see people doing brave things and we're like, oh, I can do that. Or if they can do that, I can definitely do that. Or you're just so inspiring. It makes me want to go out in my garage and paint or something, whatever. So it's contagious. We do brave things because what's on the other side is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also do brave things because we are needed to do that brave thing. So I have seen in myself, and then also in a lot of my other clients, is that usually if we're encountering some sort of block, keeping you hidden or keeping you from doing the thing you know you need to do, you need to like touch on those 3 points one more time to make sure like, wait, do I really know who needs me to do this thing? Mm-hmm. Do I know if it's going to be worth it? And also, do I have enough inspiration or like just contagious motive to get me going? Because a lot of times, if we aren't concerned about those 3 fuels, you're going to find yourself running on empty. And when you're running on empty, usually that's the moments when you're like, I don't know if I want to do this, or we'll wait till next week to publish that blog post or whatever.
This is really interesting to hear because when I started this project, I thought I was doing it for other alopecians. I was like, there's other alopecians who are suffering in this moment of panic about losing their hair or having to shave their head or, having so little hair left that you're about to shave it. And I wanted to help them and show them that it was really going to be all right and that there's a way through it. And as I went through the project, I started to realize that the people that are more inspired by my story are people who don't have alopecia at all.
Right.
But are struggling with issues of identity and beauty often and looking for, who am I? Really, that question comes up. Well, who am I? Even in the aging process, it's like, oh, well, I didn't think I was this old lady. Who am I? Essentially, I'm something else underneath that. So that's been really fascinating for me to see. I'm not sure who my audience is because I've had more interesting conversations with non-alopecians about these subjects. The alopecians seem to what we need more than anything is a community. We just need to know that there are other alopecians out there. We don't necessarily need the inspiration of each individual story, though it helps. But I really feel like maybe I'm not remembering exactly who the audience is and that it's a little bit broader than I thought.
Yeah. And I also would say that having had a similar kind of conversation about this stuff before we were recording this, I know that sometimes when we don't know what we're going to get when we walk through a new door, that lack of knowledge can sometimes hinder the choice to walk through that door.
Yeah.
So if you don't know if it's going to be a success or failure, it's easier to just to not walk through the door.
Yeah. There's an element of it for me, which is I've already succeeded because I got to take it to a film festival and I can share it with my friends and backers. And I've been able to show a completed film to many, many people. But the next stage is to make it available to absolutely anyone who wants to watch it around the world. And I don't know if I'm afraid of that. I still don't think I'm afraid of that. But I wonder if that's part of the block of really releasing the baby to anybody, not just my selected loving friends and family and backers.
Yeah, I mean, it is a next level like glass ceiling situation that I think a lot of us creatives have gone through at some point or another, and we're going to go through it again. Like the same issues of, do I hire somebody for help, or do I do this myself, or how do I move forward with this new project? That happens with every level of filmmaking.
Yeah.
The teeny tiny levels and also the massive, huge $1 million budgets. When I remembered that, like Katy Perry's making essentially the same decisions I'm making with how to make music. That sounds like such a stretch, but it's true. You know, she's hiring people to help. She has a message she wants to get out there. She's making choices about who do I have who do I have to help me make sure that this music gets in the hands of the people that it needs to get in the hands of.
Right. This is really important because it doesn't matter at what level of success that you think you're at. There are still steps that need to happen. And that has definitely been one of my things. It's like, well, I'm not a real filmmaker, but it's like, what do you have to do to be a real filmmaker? I made a film. Can I call myself a filmmaker or not? And I think that's part of it, is accepting the truth of where I am, and that there are certain things. And then it becomes actually quite fun. It's like, I'm as successful as I'm ever going to be right now. And so what decisions do I now make?
Right.
It's like, I remember, I was a dancer in New York City, a modern dancer, and that dance world is quite small. And in the modern dance world in New York City, there's this great award. It's sort of like an Oscar, and it's called a Bessie. And I wanted a Bessie, or I didn't want it that bad, but I thought, well, that would be nice, right? I'm a dancer, I could get one. And I thought that would be some level of success. And I was performing around the city, and I remember walking down, let's just say Broadway. I was walking down Broadway one day, and it just flew at me, this great revelation, which is, I'm exactly the dancer I am right now. I'm as good as I will ever be. And it makes no difference at all whether I have a Bessie or not. And I think this is kind of a revelation that a lot of people have, that their lives might change a little bit around an award or not, but it doesn't change the work that we're doing, and it doesn't change the work that we're inspired to do. Those things are just fluff and actually don't really mean anything when the real creative work is right at our hands. The fun stuff is the sort of everyday stuff. The most exciting part of my dance career was the rehearsal process, that deeply creative making in the moment, being part of something brand new was my favorite part. And no award after the fact was going to take away that really amazing place to be. And that's where I always wanted to be. And that was the amazing part of making this film, was creating something brand new and being part of that sort of rolling wave of creativity, just right on the edge of it, was so much fun. So no amount of this film for me is already amazingly successful because it's complete. It's made. And these next steps really are sort of, for me, really acknowledging that it is what it is. And I think that's part of there's no more, I don't know, I imagine with a book it's the same way. When you decide there's no more edits, this is it.
Well, yeah. First of all, amen to everything you just said. Secondly, there's, I forget who said it. I need to look that up because I refer to it all the time, especially regarding songwriting. There comes a point where you have to abandon the baby.
Yeah.
Like you have to draw a line and say, this song is done, because you could edit it until you're dead.
Yeah.
Like, the same thing happens with the book. Like I could keep going through that editing process, but there came a point in the process where I was like, no, it needs to be done. Like it needs to be done. We can't keep sitting on it.
It doesn't keep getting better and better and better. Like it might become more refined, but the essence of what it is, there's a certain level where you're not changing the essence of it. It sort of, for me, feels like a person that you could keep changing their makeup and changing their makeup and changing their makeup and tweaking their hair, but it doesn't change who that person is.
Yeah.
The essence of it is going to come through no matter how you fancy it up, those little tiny edges.
It's so true. It's so true. Speaking of taking the next steps, I'm super excited. I'm just really personally excited about more people watching this film. I'm not a bald lady.
Not yet.
But not yet. I'm not a bald lady yet.
I was thinking that you might shave your head in solidarity.
Well, hey, I'm game. I really am. If it grew out, it would look funny though, because I have so much thick hair that like it would just stick. I would look like I had just stuck my fingers in an electrical socket for a good couple months. But I'm so glad to know that there are other people who need to see your film. And I'm really grateful that you did make it and that you did follow that creative impulse to put it out there. And I'm excited to see you follow that impulse further specifically with this project, because I think it's important that people are asking themselves the questions that I asked myself while I was watching this film. And yeah. And if you guys are interested in watching it or want more information about it, go to mopcapfilm.com, MOPCAP film.com, one word. And you can watch the trailer and learn more all about how you can take the next steps for that. Because I bet you anything that Anne would probably be really stoked to find you a way to watch the film with you and your friends. So
I would be stoked. I really would love to see this film get screened and have sort of question and answers and have discussions around alopecia and hair and identity and beauty and femininity and all of those things. The questions and the talking about it afterward are so special, and sharing those ideas.
Mm-hmm. So if you're in a book club or something,
yep,
hit me and Ann up and we can make some magic happen and make it work.
Yeah.
And this has been so fantastic. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Emily Ann. It has been so much fun to talk to you.
Beyond your always free bravery bundle, which is available at barenakedbravery.com, or you can go to emilyannpeterson.com/join and you can get a whole bunch of stuff there as well. Your Bare Naked Bravery takeaway from today's show is to spend an entire week asking yourself the two questions Anne mentioned regarding her choice to wear a hat or not. Except you will ask these questions every time you're getting dressed. So the questions are, am I choosing this outfit because of my comfort, or am I choosing this outfit for the comfort of others? Neither answer is inherently right or wrong, but I do think that extra layer of awareness will definitely assist you in your curious discovery of some of the concepts that she and I discussed in today's episode. So those questions again are, am I choosing this outfit because of my comfort, or am I choosing this outfit for the comfort of others? We would love to hear how that goes. So hop into the Bare Naked Bravery Facebook group and let us know. You can find Ann Rousseau and myself on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the other places. Just if you have a shout out to give us, be sure to tag us in the shout out so that we can cheer you on and keep the conversation going as well. All of the links to go check out Ann and her film and everything she's up to are available in the show notes for this episode over at barenakedbravery.com. And that's our show this week. I'm so grateful that you listened. It's always such an honor to have you guys as listeners and community, and I'm so grateful to have you. If you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as we enjoyed making it for you, then I encourage you to leave a review on iTunes. And if you've read the book that just recently came out and is available on Amazon, yay, then you can leave a review on Amazon too. That's also really, really, really helpful. So thank you ahead of time for that. If you are digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by Lee Rosevere. And you can find out more about all the other musicians and sponsors of the show by going to barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm so looking forward to being with you next week. We have some really cool things in store for you. And again, just as a one last reminder, if you still want to take a class with me, go ahead and do so. All that info is at the beginning of this episode, but also you can just go to emilyannpeterson.com/workshops and check out some more information on the next class that's coming up. I'd love to see you in there. It'd be really fun to meet you face to face, even if it is virtually. Until then, though, until next week, and until I see you in class, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.